So you mean to tell me Clive Davis has passed away at the age of 94? I woke up shocked this morning because this man has single-handedly outlived majority of the artists he was connected to.
Leola Brown, Bobby Brown's sister, has said on several occasions that she was beaten. They saw her body. She didn't just die in a tub like...
Contrary to the coroner's conclusion that her death was accidental, Hubel claims that Houston's body shows classic defense wounds consistent with someone fighting for her life.
Saying that everything that happens in a business that's based off of pretend, that seems like a setup is.
Clive Davis is dead, and Whitney Houston's fans are saying, about time. It may sound harsh, but if you know about Clive's history with Whitney, you can't blame fans for feeling this way. And yes, Clive was indeed responsible for some of the greatest musical talents the world has ever seen. But two things can be true at the same time. He had an eye and ear for talent, but he was also a very dark figure who was accused of everything from mishandling his artists' finances to literally orchestrating their deaths. And one of these artists was Whitney Houston. Clive lived to a ripe old age of 94, while Whitney only got to live to 48. The official story of her death never made much sense, and many fans are still convinced Clive literally sacrificed Whitney. But it's not just fans. Katt Williams already told you that when something in the industry looks like a setup, that's because it is. And when someone as famous as Whitney died, you best believe someone behind the scenes is profiting off her death.
Everything that happens in a business, that's based off of pretend, that seems like a setup, is.
In business, nothing is coincidental, or you would be hearing who's losing money. In all of these situations, it's only the artist that's losing. Somebody makes big money. When these rappers get killed, not incidental. Somebody made $100 million and now don't have to talk to that artist or none of their crew, don't have to validate none of their contracts. Now only got to deal with the mama, only got to see her once a year, and it's over. And the money goes up and up and up.
And speaking of money, Clive Davis is one of the people who benefited financially from Whitney's death. Let me explain. In 2001, Whitney signed a $100 million contract with Clive's label, Arista Records. And at that time, it was the largest recording deal in music history. This deal was personally orchestrated by Clive, and it was the type of contract that operates as a giant advance that must be recouped, meaning Whitney had to earn back the money through album sales before she could see additional royalties. But by the time of her death in 2012, Whitney's finances were in a very poor state. She was reportedly millions of dollars in debt and relied on Clive for financial support. Clive helped her with loans, including paying off debts on her house and funding rehab. He was acting like her personal banker, and according to industry sources, Whitney's estate still owes Arista and Sony millions due to this unpaid balance. Now here's where it gets really shady. Immediately after her death, sales of Whitney's music skyrocketed and generated income for her estate, and that money was used to pay her outstanding debts, including the advances and loans she owed to Clive Davis and Sony Records. But guess what? The estate is still paying off that debt to Clive. In fact, one label executive said Whitney's estate probably wouldn't see a royalty check in our lifetime, meaning Clive, or whoever inherited his empire, will continue to profit from Whitney's death for years and years to come. But this has always been a pattern with these predatory record deals. When Michael Jackson died, he was an estimated $500 million in debt, partly due to massive loans from Sony. But within just 5 years, his estate had generated over $800 million, eventually surpassing $1 billion. And that's mainly because Sony and the estate could now exploit his music, image, and unreleased material without Michael's interference. So when an artist who used to be hugely successful becomes a liability and stops generating profit for the label, at that point, that artist becomes more valuable dead than alive. And this brings us to Whitney's suspicious death and Clive's bizarre behavior on the night she passed. On February 11th, 2012, the night of the Grammys, Whitney was discovered face down in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. Initial reports claim she died from accidental drowning caused by a heart attack and intoxication. However, it was later revealed that Whitney had multiple marks and abrasions on her face and body that looked like signs of struggle. Forensic pathologist Cyril Wecht also pointed out that the water in Whitney's bathtub that night was extremely hot, enough to cause serious burns. So we're supposed to believe Whitney was trying to take a relaxing bath in boiling water? Well, according to Wecht, the more likely scenario is that she was already dead when she fell into, or when someone pushed her into, the bathtub. Wecht told ABC News she was unconscious, dead, or dying when she fell into the tub. I do not believe that the death was due to drowning. And then private investigator Paul Hubel came forward with a similar story, claiming Whitney had classic defensive marks on her body. Hubel is an ex-cop who investigated other high-profile celebrity deaths, and he said that Whitney was possibly attacked by someone who supplied her with substances that night. And according to Hubel, Whitney had so many marks on her body that it looked as though she'd been in a boxing match. Call this an accident if you want, but it doesn't make sense to me, Hubel said. But that's not all. According to Hubel, he was told there was CCTV footage from the Beverly Hilton showing two men entering Whitney's hotel suite that night. However, when the National Enquirer asked Hubel why Beverly Hills police didn't act on the alleged CCTV footage, he said the police and the coroner were happy to sweep Whitney's death under the rug, calling it accidental and closing their investigation. But there were other strange things happening that night and in the days leading up to Whitney's death. And one of them was the infamous note Whitney handed to Brandy. Just 2 days before the Grammy night, Whitney crashed an interview with Clive Davis, Brandy, and Monica and passed a mysterious note to Brandy. There's even a video of this incident, and the creepiest part is that, if you pay close attention, you can hear Whitney repeating twice, "I nearly drowned today."
Now, let's talk about Clive's reaction to Whitney's death, because this is where it gets genuinely disturbing. After Clive was told that Whitney's body was found in her room, he told guests that the Grammy after party was still on. Now let that sink in. Whitney dies in her hotel suite, and her body lies there for hours, while Clive and all these other celebs are downstairs drinking, dancing, and celebrating. And obviously, there was a lot of backlash over this, but Clive doubled down and claimed the party was a tribute to Whitney and something she would have wanted.
But the Grammys were the next night. You don't cancel. You turn an evening into a tribute.
However, Whitney's friends and family shut this down and claimed this was the last thing Whitney would have wanted. One of Whitney's closest friends in the industry, Shaka Khan, publicly slammed Clive over this.
Let's eat dinner and go home.
I
couldn't get dressed. I was supposed to go to the party. I just got off a plane from Miami at about 5:30. As soon as I hit the tarmac, I found out, I heard, and I couldn't put on makeup. I couldn't get dressed. I couldn't do anything. I was paralyzed. I couldn't do anything.
So it makes you wonder, was there something else behind that party? Why did Clive insist on going through with that party by all means? Well, different theories have come up about this, but one popular one among Whitney's fans claims that the party was some kind of ritual after Whitney was sacrificed. Now you may think this is a reach, but how else to explain the fact that Clive ordered that Whitney's body should not be removed until his party was over? This report by CBS News says that Whitney's body remained in the hotel room hours after emergency responders pronounced her dead. Downstairs, Davis's extravagant party went on as planned, as investigators roamed the hotel lobby and women wearing designer ball gowns and men dressed in tuxedos shuffled by towards the red carpet. And then I also found this article, which says that Whitney remained in state in her 4th floor suite and was not removed until just moments before the party ended, a little after midnight. Now, here's another bizarre detail about this party. Of all people who were there and who were close to Whitney, Clive Davis picked Diddy to give a speech at the party. A few days after the Grammys, Diddy appeared on The Ellen Show, and when Ellen asked him about the speech he gave, Diddy got all fidgety and nervous. Check it out.
I know that you were the first, one of the first ones at Clive's party to speak about Whitney's passing the other day.
Yes.
And that was, did you know her well?
Yes, I did. I actually, when I was growing up in the music industry before I had success, I somehow got on her wedding invitation. So I was at her wedding, but I didn't really know her.
Now, why would Clive choose Diddy, of all people, to give a speech about Whitney while her dead body was in the room upstairs? Diddy was never friends with Whitney. In fact, Diddy previously blamed Whitney for supposedly ruining Bobby Brown. And here's where it gets even weirder.
After Clive's Grammys after party was over, Diddy didn't go home like the rest of the guests. He actually threw another party at the Playboy Mansion that night, and he partied so hard that he had to be hospitalized. On February 13th, TMZ reported Diddy was hospitalized the night before for a severe migraine that developed after he returned home from the post-Grammy party he hosted at the Playboy Mansion. So Diddy was so heartbroken about Whitney